A very good afternoon to all of you, and welcome to the session on writing effective dissertation and seminar paper focused on research methodology. Welcome to the session again, and as you would note that today's session, which we have planned for, is basically aiming towards writing a seminar paper and dissertation. However, the tips which you will note during the session would be helpful to you in writing any kind of paper, because these are the basic premise with which we start our research, and ultimately the objective is to have some publication at a later date, or you start your research for a publication. So we will talk about these things, but let me set some ground rules here. So there are two tabs which are available to you for asking questions. So you can use the chat box for your comments and anything which you would like to mention there. And you can use the Q&A section for your questions which you want me to address. So while I talk to you, I will be watching the Q&A section and will be picking up the questions and would like to loop in those answers while I speak. And at the end, we will also have exclusive Q&A wherein you can ask any queries, clarifications, questions from your side. I would also request you to keep a pen and paper handy with you so that you can make your notes, and any exercises which you would like to carry out while I speak would be a good exercise for you to have a practical understanding of what I speak. Now, if I would like to take you to important agenda, and agenda of today's thing is as to why, how, and what of research. So we will be talking about this, and we'll give you some tips for preparation and writing an effective seminar and dissertation paper, as well as we will touch upon basics of research methodology. I cannot say that within these 2-hour session we will be able to cover the whole research methodology. You would note that research methodology in itself is a very big subject, and that requires a different treatment altogether. If I may give you an example, so we are having a pre-credit paper in post-graduation on research methodology. That means about 45 hours of work which is required by the students to put in that paper to clear that paper, right? So you can imagine that how much amount of work is there in research methodology. However, research methodology is important for writing even a one-page paper. So you should have some methodology and organization of writing your paper. So those basics we will cover in this particular session. So feel free to use the chat box and your Q&A session for your questions. Now let me begin with the first question. And I think in research, this first question should be the question you should ask whenever you are you are doing a research is, why do you want to write? So what prompts you to write, and why do you want to write? So any inputs from your side would be welcome. I'm looking at the chat box. Why do you want to write? What motivates you, or why somebody writes? Okay, to express our views, to express our opinion on a particular topic. Fair enough. What else? Whether it is applicable to the law sector or all of them is a question. Okay, to enhance our knowledge. So when you write, you enhance your knowledge to get publication. Okay, when you want to prove something on a particular topic. Okay, for a better research and to understand about anything. Okay, spread awareness. Nice. To suggest possible solution to a particular problem or issue. Okay. So there are plenty of reasons why you want to write. right? So if we have to name some of them, let us have it. The first one, which is there, is a requirement by your professor. So most of you start writing or start writing your paper or a research because that is something which is mandated in your programs, in your courses, and you have to write. So it starts actually with a compulsion sometimes, and then later on you generate an interest and then go ahead with that. So I find that in most of the law programs, you will have seminars and dissertation, and these seminar and dissertation are part of your credit. So you have to write that particular paper, or maybe you are getting a project in your subject in which you have to write. So requirement is, prescribed by the curriculum, prescribed by your professor. Maybe your teacher wants you to write a paper, so you write it. This is one of the most primary reasons why people write, even if they are not interested. The point which you have mentioned out here is something which comes out of interest. So people who are having interest to write, definitely there are people who are having interest to write. So requirement by professor to earn good grades, these are the primary reasons with which the people write. And then ultimately when they write, they also write to publish. So you want to publish your paper, you want to publish whatever you are writing, and hence you want to write. So it loops in, it is kind of a chicken and egg situation. So many a times when you publish, you get interest in it, and then subsequently you want to write more because it gets published, people know about it, and you feel happy about that. To impress someone, many a times you also write to impress someone. I don't know whom you want to impress, but many a times people write to impress their peers, their colleagues, they want to impress the employer, or they want to impress their parents, or maybe they want to impress their professor, or their dean, or their vice chancellor, whatever may be the situation. So many a times you write to impress because your writing conveys the way you carry yourself and your thought processes, your understanding about the subject, the knowledge about the subject. That is something which gets expressed by that. And this also you do to build your academic presence. So you want to show that, yes, I know this, and I can critically think in this particular area. You also want to build your academic presence in a particular area. So say, for example, you have been writing on child rights, then you become author or a important person in that particular area because you have written several articles in that. Say, for example, somebody writes in corporate law, somebody writes in insolvency, somebody writes in fundamental rights, or maybe someone writes on, interstate relationships. So these are the different topics on which people may write, and they can build their academic presence in that particular area. So that also is one of the reasons why people write. To contribute to the thought leadership, that is also important. Many a times you would like to contribute to the existing research or existing literature which is there, and you want to contribute to the thought leadership. That is why you write. So maybe you can enhance a theory, you can bring up a theory to a particular point, or you can elaborate a particular theory, or maybe come up with a new theory itself. So this is something which you do for writing, right? Now, you also write because many a times it becomes your hobby and you enjoy writing. So many people you will find that they do journaling, and journaling is a good exercise. And what is journaling? Journaling is nothing but maintaining a diary about your activities which you do or any experiences which you have. So on a daily basis, you may meet many new people, and any significant experience, you travel. So you can journal your experience about the travel, or you meet new people, you do internships. So all these activities, when you write it in your own words, many people have this hobby of writing their experiences, and they enjoy writing it. So that is also coming out of the hobby. And many a times people write poem, many a times people write their stories, maybe short stories. So it also is part of a hobby for people to write. Now, if you talk about, there are people who just like that, they write just like that. So they just scribble and they want to write, so they keep on writing. So today's focus is on the students who are trying to build their academic presence, and there is a requirement by their professor, and they want to write a seminar paper and a dissertation. They want to impress someone, that is, they want to contribute to the thought leadership. Everyone, this would be useful. This is what would be my attempt. Let me go ahead to another important question, and that is, what do you write? And this is a very, very important question. What to write? I have given you some examples as to what to write. So people may journal their experiences, people may write about their travel, people may write about their hobbies. They can write about anything. But when you are talking about an academic setting and a requirement of your professor, the question arises, what do you write? What do you think? What do you write? Ongoing situation. Okay, so you take up a matter in an ongoing situation. So what reflection do you get out of these two pictures which are there in this? Contemporary issues. Okay, so you take up contemporary issues. Okay, current legal issue, reality check, farm bill. Okay, okay. So these are basically, you know, the points which you have mentioned: political controversies, our perception, topic of our interest. So these are the different elements which you want to write, maybe public interest. So question arises as to what do you write? Now, this is a very important question, you know, and this particular question needs to be looked at from different lenses, different perspectives. As I told you before, that why do you write? So your why do you write also decides what do you write. So if you are writing it for the good grades, you need to listen to the guidelines which prescribes how you will get the good grades. If you are writing it for the professor, then your professor will give you the guidance, what do you write? So maybe if you are studying a paper which relates to agricultural reforms, then you write a paper on agricultural reforms. If you are a student from criminal law honors, then you write something related to the criminal law case. If you are a student who related to the corporate law, you write something related to corporate law. So like this, your question of what do you write gets decided by that premise and by that background. Say, for example, you want to write for a newspaper, then you take up the latest and contemporary issues and then write. If you are writing it for a journal, then you look at the journal's genre. So if it is a consumer protection journal, you write in the consumer protection area. If it is a criminal law journal, you write for the criminal law area. So this completely depends on the context in which you are writing. But whatever may be the context, there are two things which are important in deciding as to what do you write. And that is basically called the problem statement and rationale. So you need to understand this particular thing very, very important. That is, understand the relevance of the problem statement and the rationale of your research. So before you start writing, you need to conceptualize and think about a problem on which you are writing. Because when you do research, research is basically elaboration of a particular idea or maybe examination of an idea, its historical perspective, its current perspective, and maybe the future perspective which you are trying to give. So these are the things which you have to keep in mind when you formulate a problem statement and rationale for your research. So these go hand in hand. Basically, when you are thinking about a topic, say for example, right now the issues which are going on is the farm bill. Now on the farm bill, whether it will impact the farmers or whether it has impacted the farmers or what is the rationale behind bringing up that particular bill is a question which is there. So what is the problem? Now the problem is that there are agitation by the farmers, but what is the reason for that particular agitation? Can somebody look at that particular reason? So you need to formulate a clear problem statement. So problem statement is basically the question which you are going to examine in your research, and your problem statement should be sufficiently explainable. So you would be in a situation to explain the problem statement only when you are having clarity about the problem which you are examining at. So how do we go in this step? In this step, we go like this, is first of all, you identify why you are writing. So if that is clarified that yes, you are writing for a seminar and a dissertation, you look at the subject area, because these topics explain you that you have to write in a particular seminar area. Say, for example, you are writing on energy security. So you take up a problem in that energy security area. If suppose you are writing a seminar paper relating to infrastructure sector, so you take up that particular area as an important area, and you pick up a problem statement from there. If you are writing in the criminal law, then you look at the criminal law perspective, and recently this Hathras issue is there, so you look at that and see that what can be the issues. So the question, maybe the problem can be that irrespective of having so many laws, this situation of rapes and prosecution of rapes is not getting cured. Maybe that can be one of the problem statements. So you need to, your problem statement go hand in hand with the rationale of your research, because your rationale or the objective of your research would be basically that you are examining the problem statement. So you need to have a clear problem statement that yes, these are the 4 points which we are going to examine in this particular research, and why you are examining, that is your rationale, basically comes from the problem statement. That yes, this is a big problem, and there is a need to suggest some solution, or there is a need to examine it and bring it forward to people, and that is why I need to examine this. So say, for example, you want to write a paper on farm bills, or maybe you want to see as to how corporate farming is useful to the farmer or not. So this can be your problem statement, wherein you are just trying to help the farmer. So the next question which is important for you to formulate a problem statement and rationale is basically to look at your audience. So for whom you are writing is the next question which you should think about, right? So if you look at it, you have to think about who is your audience. This is next question, which is an important question. And in all kinds of researches, this is a very, very important and a pertinent question which you should have, is who is your audience? To whom your research is targeted. It is very important to have an answer for this question. Whether you are writing only for the professor, whether you are writing only for a particular set or a group of people, whether you are writing for a student, or whether you are writing for the academic community. Well, if you are writing for the newspaper, then it is for the whole world to read, that is the general public. So, and your writings would differ in each of these situations. So say, for example, you are writing for a seminar paper and writing for a dissertation. These are the two different things, because in a seminar paper, your approach is very focused. You are talking about a specific issue and then researching upon it. Your seminar paper duration is also very less. So it is maybe 3 months, 4 months, maximum 6 months, because one semester it will take. Whereas in your dissertation, that is a dissertation which you do it for a year. Maybe if it is your PhD thing, then it is further more years. So if at an undergraduate level, if you are writing a dissertation, then for a year you spend time. So your research audience is very important, as well as the timing in which you will be writing the research is also very important. So what all you look at, who is your audience? So first of all, the first question which you have to look at is who is your target audience? So if you are writing your seminar paper and you are writing your dissertation, I believe your target audience is your mentor, supervisor, and the panel who will be sitting there and examining you for that particular dissertation. So it is very, very important to focus on the target audience rather than focusing on something else. So you may very strongly feel about a topic, but if your target audience is not very happy about your work, then probably you will not get the benefit which you want from that work, right? So it is very important to align your target audience when you are writing a research paper or a seminar and a dissertation. This is a very, very important element which one has to look at. Then you also look at from a perspective of secondary audience as to who are the other people who will be reading my research, and peripheral audience that who may sometime refer to your research. So there can be plenty of people who would be interested in your research. So maybe short term, you can think that yes, your evaluators would be looking at your research in seminar, paper, and dissertation, or you may look at the secondary audience that can be subsequently maybe a book publisher or maybe a journal publisher who wants to pick up your research, and then maybe you want to publish a paper out of your research. So this is something which you should have at the back of your mind, that who is your target audience, who next you want to approach with your research, and then the remaining people who would be the peripheral audience. Say, for example, if this is a law paper, your peripheral audience cannot be from science. So this is something which will be there, but not necessarily. Maybe if you are writing a paper which is interdisciplinary in nature, so say, for example, you are writing the legal dimensions of healthcare industry. So maybe the healthcare people or the School of Health Sciences may be interested in your paper as a peripheral audience or maybe secondary audience. So my simple point here is that be conscious about your audience. Many a times I find that researchers just jump into their research and they want to write as soon as possible without keeping in mind as to who is their audience. Largely speaking, I would say that while you look at your professor who is going to mark you for your seminar and dissertation as an important target audience, but at the same time, you should also link to it, and your professors would always understand this, that to whom you are addressing the paper. So when you identify a problem statement, say for example, when you are saying financial bill or farm bill, when you are talking about, there if you are looking at it, your question should be to whom you are addressing this particular paper. Your research problem is addressed to whom, whether it is addressed to farmers, whether it is addressed to the industry, or whether it is addressed to the corporates, or whether it is addressed to the government, who is the policymaker, or you are addressing it to the politician to look into that particular matter. This is the whole dynamics. And the scope and rationale of your paper would change as per the audience. So if you are writing, say for example, on farm bill for farmers, your paper has to be different because you need to explain the farm bill to the farmers because they are not understanding it. If it is addressed to the industry as to what is the benefit of it and how they should approach, that will be completely different. If you are addressing it to the policymakers and suggesting them that yes, there are some lacunae which you need to look at, or maybe there is a requirement of an elaboration on it, it would be different. Say for example, you are potentially suggesting for a suggesting for a legislation or maybe a change in the legislation to the politicians, your approach would be. So it is very important for you to identify your audience. I can see some hands raising, but what I would request is please use your chat box so that I can have a look at it and I will be answering your questions. Okay. Now, if I go ahead and move further, you can definitely write your dissertation topic. Keep writing on this chat box. I will be referring to the chat box and answering your queries in between itself. Okay. So keep writing that. You please use the chat box for interaction because we have had this session on a webinar mode, and I thought that that would be the better mode because I expected a lot of students here. Now we have already 155. Okay, so now let me take you to another important dimensions when you are talking about who is your audience. So there are different ways to identify who can be your audience, and in this situation, if you look at it, there are 6 ways to identify and cater to your audience, and this has been taken from writingclearscience.com, and you can see what it says, and you just have a reflection on it. It says, ensure your key message are clear and relevant to your audience needs. Outline the importance of problems you are solving. So as I told you before, so it is very, very important for you to have a clear message which you want to give. Whether your readers are same into the same fraternity. If they are not into the same fraternity, you need to categorize it. And you can have different categorization for your readers or for your audience. You need to also consider their background as to for whom you are writing, who is your target audience. When you are deciding them, what kind of a background they are, what is their qualification. So maybe you cannot have too much of a legalese when you are writing a paper which is addressed to farmers and industry. Maybe if you are addressing it to policy makers, maybe it can have a lot of legalese. So it is very important that who is your audience, you should be very, very clear about it. Many a times you should not have assumptions. Many a times I think people have assumption that your audience knows your topic as well as you know. So maybe you are writing a seminar paper on derivatives. And I recollect that when I was a professor in HNLU, and I was given a task to examine the seminar papers, and I received papers which were completely new for me, like securitization, derivatives. Now these were the papers which I never read, but at the same time I had to spend a lot of time to read them and try to understand it before I evaluate those particular. So it is very important that you not assume that your audience knows everything. So many a times a brief introduction is always useful, and that is how you go ahead with explaining it. But if you are writing a paper, then you don't explain, it means you don't give rudimentary examples also. So it completely depends at what stage you are picking up your research and who is your audience. So if your audience are senior professors, then in that situation, you assume that they would know certain things about law. But if you are addressing that particular paper, which is interdisciplinary in nature, wherein there will be maybe your paper is read by health professionals as well as the lawyers, then in that situation, you need to have some clarificatory things already in your paper available for the health professionals, because they would not understand as to the legal terms and terminologies. Also, it is important to note that what your reader needs. So what is their need about it? And I'm saying this in the context of publication, because ultimately your goal of writing a seminar and dissertation is not just to get grades and done with it. Your ultimate aim should be publication of that seminar paper and dissertation, and that you can do only when you consider what your reader needs. So if you are addressing, say for example, you are writing a paper on energy security, and then you want to publish it in a journal which is dealing with energy, then you should be clear as to what your readers are requiring. So for that, you have to do a lot of review of literature. I will come down to that review of literature in a while. Say, for example, Anuj says that representation of crime by Indian media. Now, this is something which is a paper which he wants to write, but exactly what? Representation of crime by Indian media is not a complete sentence. So it is not completely giving you the title as to what this paper would mean. So I'll come down to the title in a while, then we will utilize this example. But here, it is also very important that you also seek feedback. So many a times when we do research, it is very important to seek feedback. So don't straight away, keep on going and going and going without taking feedback. It is always better to take feedback from peers, feedback from your seniors, feedback from your faculty. So at different stages, bring these particular elements for discussion before the peer group, before your classmates, maybe before your study group which you are having. So kindly bring these things in front so that can be discussed and that can be brought forward. And any lacunae or any additional points which can be given in that paper is available to you. So my suggestion to you would be that be open at this particular stage when you are deciding why to write, what to write, and to whom you are addressing your paper. These are the three important questions which you should address, which you should have clarity in your mind, which will give you a clear understanding and your progress path about your research paper, that is your seminar or dissertation. Let me now move further, but before I move, I would be happy to take any questions. I already see two questions here, and one question talks about what would be the peripheral audience in cyber feminism and gender inequality on social media. Now, I think peripheral audience here would be everyone. So it can be the general public, it can be the anyone who is interested in this particular topic whom you don't know. But who would be your target audience is the question, and who can be your secondary audience. So I believe secondary audience in this particular case could be all your law people who are related to law, and target audience would be definitely the people who are working on cyber law, and people who are working on feminism. So feminism people and cyber law people, these are the two people who are your primary audience, and maybe the legal circle overall is your secondary audience, and maybe tertiary audience is everyone. So whosoever is interested in the topic in the social media. So this is something which is very, very important, which you should have in your mind. And if you are talking about the other topics, like for example energy, when we are talking about, so definitely people who are working in the energy law and energy sector would be your primary audience. So think like that when you are working about your papers and problem statement area and rational area. Now let me move further and talk about an important element which everybody should keep in mind is review of literature. Now, review of literature is basically the, what I should say is plinth. So I don't know how many of you follow construction, but if you go to the construction site, you know, the majority of the work which happens is laying down the plinth, or which we say neev dalna. So that neev is very important, and your neev comes from review of literature. So it is very, very important for you to spend significant amount of time in review of literature. I believe in your research, the most important part of your research is review of literature, because rest thereafter follows, you know, data collection, and these are the things which will happen. But review of literature is very, very important step. And this step is also a step which gives you a reality check. This gives you a mirror about your thought on problem and rational. Because if you are thinking about a problem and a rational, what is the objective of research? Objective of research is not just to write. So as I told you, why do you write? One of the points which I mentioned, just like that. So it cannot be just like that, you know, your research, because you may write just like that. There are a number of people who have done research in your same area in which you are writing just like that. So it doesn't, you know, make sense. So it is very important for you to do a review of literature and try to find out that who are all people who have written in this area already. So the question in research always is that there is no point reinventing the wheel. If say, for example, you want to write representation of crime by Indian media. Now, this is something which there you will find plenty of papers, people have already written it. So if people have already written that particular paper in that area, you need to advance the knowledge beyond it. And that is the idea of research. There is no point writing on the same topic which has been written by people. I'm not saying exactly the same topic, but you need to advance it further. And that is why review of literature is important. So what do you do in review of literature? Many a times you will find that people, when they start researching, you know, nowadays the things have become quite easy. So we all have this Google Master. So you all just go to Google, type it, and even people don't go till the 50th search. 50th search is too much. I think fifth search, they don't go beyond fifth search, and they find 5-6 articles, and then thereafter their research is done. So I believe this is not a right approach for review of literature. I believe your review of literature should start from library. So this is very, very important. Before you move on to social media, before you move on to Google, it is very, very important that you visit the library. Now, many of you will ask a question that library nowadays is online. So what to do? Okay, go to library online also. That is not a problem. So offline or online, go to library, because not everything on the internet is true. It is very, very important for you to refer to the authentic sources when you are doing review of literature. I recollect people, you know, quoting one of the Supreme Court decisions wherein someone quoted something from fakenews.com, and you know, and that was presented, and there was so much of embarrassment for that lawyer before. That kind of a thing happens in research as well. So be careful when you are doing the review of literature, refer to the authentic sources, and then come up with your ideas about the topic. Now, where do you do review of literature, and why do you do, and how many resources is sufficient? Now, this is a very difficult question to answer. So it completely depends as to which area you have picked up for research. So if you have picked up an area which is completely new, say for example, artificial intelligence and law, or maybe blockchain and law, that these are the areas which are less researched. I cannot say that less research, but that is not that much researched as would be the rape laws or maybe laws which relate to human rights or something like that. Okay? So it is very important for you to find out the major publications in that area. So what do you look at? So first of all, you need to do a search of the literature on the basis of the topic which you have chosen. So say, for example, you have chosen cyber feminism. So you need to read something more relating to feminism. If you are talking about social media, read something relating to social media. So these are the topical indexes on which you will do the search for review of literature. Similarly, you need to also look at the authors, that who are the primary authors, maybe top 10 people who are working in this area. So say, for example, you are writing on energy law. Now you need to find out the top 10 authors in your sector who are writing in energy law. Say you are writing in the corporate law area. So you need to identify 10 top authors who are writing in the corporate law and find out their writings about a particular topic. Say, for example, in corporate law, you choose corporate governance. So now you will be having 10 people who are writing into corporate governance area, and then you search for their papers, what they have written in that area. So it is important you do a topical search, you do an author search, and you also do a journal search. Many a times when you are writing a particular paper in an area or a particular area, say for example, you are writing in infrastructure. If you are writing in infrastructure area, there may be journals who are dedicated to the infrastructure sector. So you need to consult those journals. Say for example, you are writing in energy law, then you need to consult journals relating to energy law. If you are writing in the area of corporate law, refer to the journals which are catering to corporate law. If you are writing in insolvency and bankruptcy code, you focus on the journals which are relating to insolvency and bankruptcy code. If you are writing in the cyber law area, focus on journals, maybe 5, 7, 8 journals which are published in that area, maybe topmost journals. So you get the best of the articles which are written in that area, and that broadens your horizon. And it is very, very important for you to that broadening of horizon and knowing exactly what kind of a research has already happened in that particular area, so that you can form up your problem statement and rationale and objectives very clearly, and then that can be presented to your synopsis committee, whosoever is approving your synopsis, right? So it is very, very important for you to do a detailed review of literature. Now, if I may take you further, so if one has to go ahead and talk about other aspects, you also need to talk about jurisdiction. So say, for example, you are writing energy policy, you are writing a paper on energy policy, and now energy policy in Brazil is different than energy policy in China and the energy policy in Russia. So it is very important for you, if you are writing energy policy from the context of India, to look at the jurisdiction part of it. So maybe you can have, if you are doing a comparative analysis between China and India, then that is a perfectly fine that you are looking at a journal in Chinese journal on energy policy. But say, for example, you are doing a comparison between China and India on energy policy, then in that situation, there is no point referring to a journal which is in Russia on energy policy, right? So it is very important for you to look at the jurisdiction also when you are doing the review of literature. So maybe there is a literature which is available in a particular jurisdiction, but that does not suit to your circumstances. Maybe if you are doing a comparative review, then it can, but otherwise not. Then you need to also funnel your review. It is very, very important funneling your review. Funneling of review is basically that you start broader and then ultimately you pin down to your topics. So say, for example, if I say here, there is a question on telemedicine and data privacy. Here someone is written. Now, privacy and telemedicine and data privacy, these are the two different things. Now, it is kind of an interdisciplinary research which you are talking about. Now, when I say data privacy, now data privacy is a big thing and it has got so many aspects to it. Now, here data privacy is focused towards telemedicine, right? So you are funneling the research. So what do you find? You find research which relates to telemedicine, you find research which relates to data privacy, you put it in the funnel, and then you try to find out the researches which are catering to both these particular areas and then bring it down. So review of literature always starts with broader periphery and then it funnels down to your specific topic with which you are doing your research. Another important part which you should look in research is review of literature, methodology. So you need to focus on methodology as to which kind of methodology people have utilized. So your previous researchers have already done a lot of work in this area, and you should also look at their methodology, whether they have utilized the empirical methods, whether they have done the doctrinal method, whether they have utilized a case analysis method, what kind of a data they have referred to, what kind of a citation, what kind of a, so it is very important for you to go through each and every citation or each and every reference which you can find in the journal article in terms of your review of literature. And with my experience, I can say you that while you do all these particular things, you simultaneously keep working on your abstract and synopsis as well. So a review of literature is a very significant step. I will spend some more time on review of literature, and that is what my next slide says. So if you talk about review of literature, it is very important to create a literature review log, right? So this is a tip which I can give you. Kindly maintain a log. Just don't do an abstract reading. It's very important for you to maintain a log as to different kinds of reading which you do. Have a folder, have arrangement. So I would suggest, I would expressly say that organization is very important in research. Whichever research you do, unless you are organized, you don't have a clear bifurcation of your topics, clear arrangement of your topics, it will be difficult for you to chart out a research. You will sometimes forget, because once you start doing reading, you forget that what I read 2 days before, what I read next day. So it is important that whichever literature you do, you prepare a log, you prepare a note, and that is important for. So note taking is at the base of your research. So whenever you start reading, maybe you pick up a journal. So what your notes should refer to. Notes should mention your journal, who is the author, what are the major points which have come up out of the research, and what are the recommendations of that particular research, how relevant it is to your topic which you have chosen. So this is something which you create, that is basically called creating a literature review log. In terms of literatures, there are different kinds of literature, and primarily, if you look at it, this can be categorized into 3 types of sources. One is called primary sources. So primary sources are generally constitutions, treaties, statutes, regulations, case decisions, ordinances, and jury decisions. In India, we don't have jury decisions, but in case you are referring to the US, then you will have jury decisions. Now, these are all primary sources. What do you mean by primary sources? Primary sources are basically sources which are primary in nature, means they are original. So they are coming from the first hand. So if you have read Evidence Act, you will know primary evidence, secondary evidence. So these are all primary evidences, which is first hand. Many a times I find people, rely too much on secondary resources. Maybe in fact, many a times they rely on tertiary resources for their research rather than primary research. I have seen students writing on a particular topic without reading the bare act, without reading the bare provision. I would suggest, see, in all kinds of legal research, whatever kind of a research you are doing, it is very important for you to be familiar with the constitutional provision relating to that issue, because constitution is the primary and base legislation. So your law or the thing which you are examining must be clearly in conformity with the constitution. That is why you need to be familiar with the constitutional provisions which relate to your work. Say, for example, you are talking about Farm Bill. Now, you need to be clear as to Farm Bill is passed under which list, union list, state list, or concurrent list, and what is the interrelationship between that? What is the interrelationship between central and state relations before you examine the Farm Bill? It is very, very important. Similarly, it goes to the data privacy part of it. If you are talking about whose responsibility to protect that data, what are the constitutional obligations to protect the data? So this is something which you should be clear. What is the statute? Whether the Aadhaar Act will apply or whether the Information Technology Act will apply. So these legislations you should be familiar with. So the first point of review of literature is your constitution and the relevant statute and regulations and case laws. So any latest cases which have been decided on that matter is very important. Let's say, for example, data privacy. If anyone wants to do a research on this area, they should be completely thorough with the Puttaswamy's judgment, because if you are not then what kind of a research you will do. So that is part of review of literature. Many a times people think that, okay, fine, we will go ahead with this topic and then later on maybe read Puttu Swami. That will not serve your purpose. It is important for you to read it at the stage of literature review. What happens is this will also give you a clear light on your topic and on your thought, on your processes, on your thoughts about your research, and that clarity will help you in having a clear cut topic for you, rather than having a trying to find your way in the muddy waters. So this is very important for you to have a look at. Now, if you go ahead and try to find out about the secondary resources, we have restatements, dictionaries, law reviews and journals, and treatises. Now, this is quite an interesting observation that treatises are at both the places, primary resources and secondary resources. So there can be treatises which are primary resources, and there can be treatises which are secondary resources. So if it is a treatise which is written by someone for the first time, maybe say, for example, Mullah on contracts, I think that is a treatise, or maybe H.M. Sirvai on constitution, that is a treatise, which is kind of a primary source. But if someone has written over and above that, then that becomes a secondary source, right? So Ramaiah on company law, that is a primary source of treatise. But if later on it has been edited by people and they have contributed to it, that becomes the secondary source. So that is the difference between these two treatises from a primary source and secondary source. So when I say treatise primary source, that is the basic, the original article, original paper, original book, or original treatise. And then over and above, if there is an amendment and editing which has happened, then that becomes a secondary source. I hope that clarifies your doubt. This is something which is there. So now, if you go ahead and try to see as to how to go about creating a log on review of literature, first of all, it is important to organize your literature. So please have a clear folder and bifurcate. So what I do, I can tell you my practice. So I have a folder in which I keep all the articles whichever I search, because many a times it is not possible for you to read all the articles. Generally, what you do is you will search for the articles and then put it in your folders for reading it next. So I create a folder. Say, for example, I am writing a paper, seminar paper on infrastructure. So I will create seminar paper on infrastructure, and in that I will keep on saving all the articles which I found. And whenever I save the article, I don't save it with the original name. What I do is I write the year of the paper and the author and the name of the paper. Like this, I save it so that it is clearly available to me in my folder whenever I want to read it. Secondly, what I do is I have an Excel sheet maintained with me, and whenever I will read the paper, whichever paper I am reading, I will put the citation there in the paper. So there is a citation format with which I will write. So it becomes handy for me if whenever I have to cite that paper, I have to just copy that citation from the Excel sheet and put it in the Word document. So it becomes very easy for me. And I do it once for all. So that Excel sheet is always available. Whenever I will be quoting that particular paper, I will be utilizing that particular citation in the Word document. So this becomes very, very handy. Many a times people do is that they will just pick up a paragraph from the article, put it in their paper, and then they forget that from where they have put up the article. So don't do that. It is very important to organize your literature. And then in that seminar on infrastructure paper, I will also keep a folder called read. So whichever paper I have read completely or utilized it, I will just pick up that and put it into the used paper. So I know that these are the papers which I have already read, and these are the papers which is yet to be read. So this is how I organize my work. You can take this tip or you can have your own, because everybody's organizational capabilities and aspects are different. So I have just shared my view with you. You people are free to share your views as well. Now, as I said, take notes while reading. So keep a diary and a register whenever you are reading in a soft copy. Nowadays, we maintain it in a soft copy itself. So that also you can do. But ideally speaking, I would say that scientific studies says that when you write on a piece of paper, that you can memorize better and you can create a better mind map when you are writing with your hand. So it is always better to keep a diary and make your notes there. So this is again a tip. Maybe some of you will feel that I am too conventional to give you this suggestion, but this works for me. I don't know about you. If your soft thing works for you better, you can go ahead with that. What works for me, I have just put. And then be up to date, but do not forget the older studies. So it is very important for you to also refer to the traditional studies. Many a times I find that people do research and they always search for the latest articles and then they will read it. But many a times there is a seminal article which has been written some time back and people don't refer to that. So it is very important for you to also see the seminal articles in your area. Maybe it has been written in 75, doesn't matter. But refer to that, it gives you a lot of understanding and literature. I will give you my example. I was doing a research on legal education. And I found a Upendra Bakshi article in somewhere in the 79. It's such a beautiful article written. And it is kind of a treatise. And when you read that article, you will find that most of the things which he has spoken in 79 holds good for now also. So this is something which is important. So be up to date, but do not forget the old. So this is about creating your review of literature. Once you are done with review of literature, as I told you, that review of literature is a very, very important stage for you. After you have done this, what is the next step is again revisit what to write. It is a very important element here that now you formulated a problem long back before your review of literature. You had a rationale for your research. And I can tell you in 8 of the 10 cases, you will review this. Because when you have read the literature, when you have known more about the topic, you can have to revisit your problem statement. Because you will come to know about new facts, new information, and you need to change your topic maybe. I don't know. So that will depend completely that how deep your review of literature was. So it is important for you to focus on that aspect as well. Now, then here is the stage when you attempt your title for your research. So this is a time when you are clear about your problem statement, you are clear about your rationale, why you are doing this research, then you attempt the title of your research. Many a times I find people, they start with title. Don't do that, because your title will change, because you cannot do your research on the basis of the title which you have read. You have to do your research on the basis of the material you have examined and the data which you have. So your title should be at a very later stage and have that review of literature first. And that is why normally you will find people will ask you for a title after a month. So if someone is asking for a title on a day, first day, I think that is not a right. Maybe they are talking to you in terms of, maybe your supervisor is saying that, okay, fine, give me the title so that broadly I know where your research is heading. But at the same time, when you are finalizing your title, that is something which is completely on the basis of a lot of credible research, and you have already taken a lot of pains in reading those materials, and you are clear about your problem statement by them. Let me now take you to an important element, that is how you will do that. So you have formulated your problem statement, you have written the rationale and objective of your research, you have also attempted your title. Now what? Now how to go ahead? So next important part is your research methodology. What kind of a research methodology you will be following while doing the research? Now, research methodology is nothing but a tool, basically, available to the researchers to do their research. Generally speaking, researches are done either in a quantitative way or a qualitative way. When I say quantitative research generally is done by collecting data. And these are the researches which can be in the form of a survey. So say, for example, you want to do a marketing research, you do a survey, you try to find out how consumers behave or how consumers feel about a particular topic or an issue. Or you want to do a comparative study, or you want to do a correlational study between two aspects, say, for example, telemedicine and data privacy. So you are trying to examine the correlation of this. or you want to do a research on a single subject, or maybe you want to do an experiment. So these are the different ways by which or research methodology by which you want to do research, and these are all quantitative research methods. When I say quantitative research methods, it basically means that you are going to X number of respondents, collecting the data, and after data analysis you are giving the result. However, there are qualitative research as well, and these qualitative research would be generally historical, wherein you are trying to understand how the development has taken place. So historical analysis you do. Many a times you will be doing the content analysis. So say for example, you are examining 50 judgments of the Supreme Court of India on insolvency bankruptcy court, or maybe 50 top judgments by India, by Supreme Court on rape law, rape cases, as to what is their opinion, or maybe death penalty cases. So you must have seen under 39A article, there is a lot of research which has happened and on death penalty. So these are the ways by which you can do your qualitative research. So there are two primarily, one is qualitative and the other one is quantitative. And then there are other kinds of research like case study, phenomenal, grounded theory, ethnographic. I believe this is not much relevant at this stage for you. But subsequently, if you go ahead with research methodology classes, maybe these research methodology would be more useful to you, or you will be reading them as a part of your research methodology classes. At this stage, just remember that there are two types of research methodology. One is quantitative and the other one is qualitative. When I say qualitative, it is basically examining of the text, examining of the qualitative perspective. Say, for example, you are doing an interview of 10 principals of schools about their experience of COVID-19 and the teaching learning methodology. Now, this is something which is not quantitative, but this is qualitative interview. But you can make it quantitative also. So when you make it quantitative, then in that situation, you will have some questions, and on the basis of questionnaire, you ask a question and you collect the data, and on the basis of data, you just go ahead with the results. So it is kind of a prefabricated solution. You have 4 options. Out of the 4 options, you are exploring whether which option is most suited. So it is kind of a survey which you are doing. So these are the methodologies which you follow while doing the research. So this is one part which I wanted to give you. Now let me talk about another important aspect, and that is research methodology. Yeah. So research design is very important. So when I say research methodology, you need to finalize a research design as to which research design you will follow while doing the research. So generally you will follow doctrinal research. These are theoretical research. Many a times we do doctrinal research only. So I think most of your seminar papers would involve doctrinal research. Most of your dissertation would involve doctrinal research, but you can have a scope of doing a non-doctrinal research in dissertation. So when I say doctrinal research, this basically involves analysis of case laws, arranging, ordering, and systematizing legal propositions, and you do study of legal institutions, and you basically utilize legal reasoning and rational deduction. So this is something which you do in doctrinal research. It is also referred to as theoretical research or desk research, where you don't have to go to people to collect data. There are non-doctrinal researches as well, and this is called socio-legal research. And in this particular situation, you collect empirical data. And these kinds of researches would involve sampling. So what is sampling? Sampling is quite simple. So I'm sure many of you would be cooking. So when you cook rice, how do you test that whether the rice has been cooked or not? Basically you pick up 3-4 grains from the kettle and then try to press it and find that whether it has been cooked or not. Similar is the situation of sampling. So you need to you cannot do a survey. Survey means you actually examine everybody, but if you are doing it as sampling, then you take up a sample. So maybe out of 100 you take 10 people and then you say that yes, it applies to all of them. So this is something which you do in non-doctrinal research. And while collecting the sample, you use questionnaire, you use observation. These are the things which you use while doing the sampling. And as per the stage in research methodology, you collect the data, and data collection is done by way of a questionnaire. Generally, for undergraduate students, if you have to do non-doctrinal research, you will have quite maybe 10-15 questions, and on the basis of which it is more of a understanding the methodology and experimenting it with smaller sample rather than doing a big research out of it, because one does not expect that out of a dissertation you will have such a bigger research coming out of it. I recollect when I was teaching competition laws last semester, my students, I gave a project that was an empirical project, and they did a wonderful job in that empirical project. So they interviewed. I will give you some of the examples. Like there was a case. There was an example of competition or competitiveness between the restaurant and cafes in Dehradun area. So that was quite an interesting study which the group of students did. So they went to these all cafes and they asked them few questions. So there were 10-15 questions, and they asked them as to what is the competitive constraint, how do you price your products. So it was such a wonderful non-doctrinal research which was done by these students. So this kind of research will be basically non-doctrinal. It can be also socio-legal research as to whether you are getting benefit of the government schemes, or say for example in COVID arena, we can have questions like what kind of a discrimination do you face in this situation. So there can be plenty of areas around that which can feature as a non-doctrinal research topic. Be whatever may be the situation, whether it is a doctrinal research or a non-doctrinal research, in any of these situations, you will have a mechanism to you need to have research questions. So ideally speaking, whenever you are doing a research, my suggestion would be have at least 4 or 5 questions which you are examining. So idea of research question is that at the end you are finding answers to these questions. So I told about problem statement in the beginning, right? So it is basically a problem statement, but in point form. So you have already written the problem statement, and your problem statement actually highlights what is the problem which you are examining in your research, and your research questions basically writes down the question which you are finding an answer to. Like say for example, if you are talking about research question, say we are saying telemedicine and data privacy. So maybe the research question can be that whether telemedicine poses problems relating to data privacy, or there can be a question whether telemedicine creates issues relating to data privacy. This is something which can be your research question. Or maybe whether data privacy laws are sufficient enough to take care of the situations which will emerge out of the telemedicine. So this is something which can be your question. If I talk about another point which someone of you have given here is about cyber crimes. So you can say whether the social media has increased the cybercrime rate, or whether the social media has contributed towards cybercrime. Or maybe your research question could be an comparative examination of national security concerns and individual privacy. So this is something which can be your research questions. Have at least 4 or 5 research questions in your dissertation, and for your seminar paper, even 2 or 3 research questions are sufficient. In case you should also have hypothesis, I believe, for both seminar and dissertation, but in dissertation it is a must. You should have an hypothesis. An hypothesis is generally a statement which you assume, right? So it is kind of an assumption. So say for example, you are writing a paper that telemedicine poses a serious concern in data privacy. So your presumption is that data privacy challenges would be bigger in telemedicine. So this is something which you think about it when you are starting your research, and you need to test this particular hypothesis. So in your research, you will be doing your reading, you will be trying to understand, maybe you will talk to doctors and then take this particular data, and then maybe your hypothesis gets tested positive or negative. So it can be both way around. So it is not necessary that every time whatever you think as your hypothesis will get a affirmation after your research. It may happen that whatever you thought of, your research ultimately went in a different way. So my supervisor used to tell me that even if you are doing a research on something and you find nothing out of that, that is also a research, because you can write it in your paper saying that I did research on this particular topic, I find nothing available in this. That is your finding, which can be communicated to the whole world, and the whole world will not search that particular question in future, right? Or maybe they will search for a different answer from it. So this is quite an interesting observation, which I got it from my PhD supervisor, and I am just sharing it with you as my experience. So at this stage, I would like to take questions, because probably I have covered a lot of ground as far as writing seminar and dissertation paper is concerned. We are talking about research methodology. Any questions so far? Because this is a very important last two slides. We'll be happy to address that. Please use your chat box, as well as you can use your Q&A section. Well, there is a topic, corporate frauds and impact on economy. Now, as a theme, it is a good theme, but how you will do the research is a question, because from where you will get the data, and how you will judge the impact on economy. This is the question which I would ask from student if he is taking this particular topic. Definitely, corporate fraud and impact on economy, there is a relationship, but how do you present this? So whether you will be able to get data enough on impact on economy vis-a-vis corporate frauds is a question which one should ask. So this is something which has to be and let me talk about another part. Okay, so there is people are asking me about the research topic in the area of corporate law and this. Now, guys, I would suggest that you do a research and never ask a topic from your supervisors. You should be convinced about your topic. This is what means my answer would be, because I believe if I suggest you a topic, I am quite biased, because I have a pre-existing knowledge about a lot of other things. And then maybe I will be thinking about a topic. I don't know as to what is your background and where do you go ahead with your research and all. So it is better for you to go ahead with your own research first, and then think about your topic, about your area, right? So never ask a topic from your supervisor. This is something which I would give a tip to you. Read, research, and take 4 or 5 topics to your supervisor and ask them that which one do you think is better. That will be a better way to do it. Yeah. Okay. Yes, that can be Pragya. If I talk about historical aspect of our research paper, see, you can have your research completely on the historical aspect, examining. Maybe someone wants to examine the historical perspective of the company legislation in India. That itself can be a research. Right? So it depends as to what is your area and how do you do it. Okay, so I will talk about these things in a while, and let me now go ahead further. Now, when you talk about the stages, as we talked about before, primarily there are 3 phases of your research, and the first one is choosing and defining. So this is a very important stage, and I think you people have already got a deadline to do this first phase by 10th of October. I think that is the date. So here you should complete your review of literature, do a lot of brainstorming with your peers, with your supervisor, and then finalize your topic, finalize your research problem, your clear objectives and hypothesis, and what kind of a methodology you do. And then in phase 2, you do the analyzing and assessing part of it. Now, in case of doctrinal research, I believe a lot of this assessing and analyzing you have done in this review of literature. So in case of doctrinal researches, I believe your phase 1 and phase 2 are a bit merged, because your literature review continues in your phase 2 as well. So if you are having doctrinal research, which you are doing purely by reading the law and then analysis, then that keeps on going here. So here the collection of data won't happen. That collection of data is nothing but collection of your literature. And analysis and interpretation is basically reading that particular literature and drawing your conclusion out of it. And phase 3 is basically communicating, that is, you're presenting your research and writing the paper. Now, generally in dissertation, it is in 2 parts. So dissertation basically is phase 1. So phase 1 is yours in 1 semester, and phase 2 and 3 is in the next semester. This is how your dissertation is arranged. For your seminar, I think all these 3 phases in 1 semester. This is how your seminar is arranged. So people who are doing dissertation, they should focus more on literature review till the end of their synopsis, and they should come up with the title and everything, methods, everything clear by end of the dissertation period, that is this semester. And people who are doing their seminar paper, they have to do all the things together. However, I believe you have been told to give your topic for dissertation as well as seminar paper by 10th of October somewhere. In that situation, you have to give a broad theme for dissertation people. For seminar people, it is actually the core, you have to give the final topic for seminar. Whereas for dissertation, it can be tentative because you will finalize your title after you complete your synopsis. So this is something which is as per the stage part is concerned. And if I talk about research proposal flow, this is the research proposal flow generally. So you start with introduction, you have research questions, you answer the questions, what, why, how, and then you prepare the summary of proposal, literature review you do, and then you do talk about methodology, you talk about data, that is data collection, and there is one significant important part that is called statement of limitation. So you should always provide a limitation of your research, because your research is one of the major limitations in your researches would be basically the time, right? So you have to mention that your time is short, or maybe your period is sufficient enough to do this much of presentation. So don't pick up, bigger areas or broader areas, because that will unnecessarily you put a lot of pressure on your head. So be choosy, be clear about your title, about your research questions, which you can examine within these 3 months. Maybe, researchers always have this particular, hungriness of taking too many topics for them. When they start doing the review of literature, they feel that, okay, we should include this also, because it will become comprehensive. Maybe you want to write a book, but that much period is not sufficient for you to complete that task. So be clear about the time limitations part, also very, very important. And then ultimately conclusion is very important part of it. And I will come down to that in a while. But let me check your questions in a while. Okay. Now, fulfilling hypothesis, as I told you, that fulfilling hypothesis is something which is, that is nothing called fulfilling hypothesis. It is basically about, creating your hypothesis, and then ultimately either your hypothesis is tested positive or negative. This is what happens. So basically you start with an assumption, and you just at the end of your research, you say whether your assumption was right or whether your assumption was wrong. So this is something that happens as far as assumptions. Right. So I will take the questions at the end. Let me complete my presentation. So now if I talk about this, then title of your research is very important. And many a times I will find title which is just abstract. So writing a title is very, very important. And if you don't have a clear title, your title should have some peculiarities. Your title should convey certain things. So one first thing is that your title should be clear. It should be interesting. So it is very important that your title attracts the reader's attention. This may be not very relevant in terms of seminar and dissertation paper, but when you are proposing to publish your seminar and dissertation paper, be conscious about it, right? So when you are presenting your seminar, presenting your dissertation paper as a publication, then your title should be interesting enough so that people get interest out of it, so that they pick up your title. It is just about your marketing kind of a thing, right? Second, your title should not be very lengthy. So don't have a title running into pages. I have seen title into 5 lines. Now that is something which is not advisable. As shorter your title, the better it is. So if you are able to convey your idea with lesser words, this is something which is celebrated in research. So please keep in mind that your title should not be more than 10 to 15 words. Further, don't use too many technical jargons in your title. Keep it simple, right? And make sure that they are conforming to the guidelines which is given to you. Further, don't use abbreviations and all in your title. So it is advisable to have full forms in your title, not abbreviations in your title. So this is something which is what I had to tell you about title. I can see some of the in the chat box, some title people have talked about. Like say, for example, if I have to pick up this see, there is something which is called infrastructure development, current bottlenecks and the way forward. Now this is the title. Now what are you doing here? Now this particular title doesn't convey exactly what you will be doing. I understand infrastructure development, current bottlenecks and the way forward. So what are you doing with this? Either you are doing a critical analysis, whether you are doing a comparative overview, whether you are doing an analysis or a summary, means that is not clearly conveyed. So your title should convey that particular aspect clearly, that as to what your paper does, whether it is an analysis, whether it is a critical analysis, whether it is examination, that is not clear from you. It is just an abstract line which is written. So be careful about it. And when you say current bottlenecks and way forward, this is too broad. Infrastructure development is too broad. So I don't think that you will be able to do this much into a seminar paper or a dissertation. So you need to be very clear, infrastructure development in which sector, which infrastructure which you are talking about. And when you say current bottlenecks, there are plenty of bottlenecks. And would you like to specifically address a bottleneck, or you want to identify all the bottlenecks and present it forward? Or maybe you want to examine the challenges. So this is something which should be clear in your mind. So this is just an example which I picked up for title. Now I have got another title that is called Mob Lynching, a crime that exonerates the offenders in India. Now this is a statement, this is an hypothesis. So your title cannot be an hypothesis. So basically what Rohan is saying is that mob lynching, it is a crime that exonerates the offenders in India. Now, this is the hypothesis. Now, what is your examination basically? What is your title? Your title basically is examination of mob lynching laws in India, maybe, or maybe ineffectiveness of analysis of laws relating to mob lynching and its ineffectiveness or effectiveness, whatever you say, right? So your title should be surrounding that. So be clear about it. Maybe that appears fancy, but so in your title generally you don't put question mark, right? So don't have your title with question marks, right? So it is something which you should avoid. You should clearly write whether it is an analysis, critical analysis, comparative statement, something like that. Okay, so this is something which you should keep in mind while formulating your title. Now, yeah, I have answered this question. Now let me move ahead. Chapterization. So you should also clearly mention in your synopsis about your chapterization. And chapterization would have an introduction. Introduction should be sufficiently explanatory about your project, and it should also include research methodology. So for seminar papers, maybe people won't insist research methodology, but if you write a research methodology, that gives you brownie points. So whoever is examining your paper, they will be happy to see that you know research methodology and you have an understanding about it and you have utilized in your research. For seminar paper. For dissertation, you have a mark for the research methodology, so mandatorily you have to write and be aware about it, what you write. So many a times I find people have written hypothesis and they don't know what the hypothesis is. So be careful when you use research methodology and you are writing your objectives, hypothesis, you should be aware exactly what do you mean by it, right? So kindly do some reading around it. So, some basic reading will do. Then you should have your core chapters, and your core chapters should be arranged sequentially. So just see the order of your chapters, how it is arranged. And generally speaking, I think 5 chapters is enough for dissertation. So 5 to 7 chapters. And when you are arranging these particular literature, the core chapters, have your headings and subheadings in place. So it is very important to arrange your material into headings and subheadings. It becomes easy to scan through the document. It becomes easy for your reading as well when you are preparing for your Viva. It becomes easy for you to know which are the major topics and areas which you have taken. It becomes easy for reference point also. So say for example, your Viva essay is being taken. So people can just ask you that chapter number 4.5, can you come to 4.5 or 4.4? And you know exactly where you have to go. So that actually helps you better, and it appears to be more organized as well. So be clear about this. So use headings and subheadings while you are writing your chapters. And ultimately, you should also give your conclusion and major recommendation. So many a time I find that while people write conclusions, students don't give major recommendations as to what is their opinion about. So you are writing your research paper not for summing up different people's opinion and then putting it together. At the end, after looking at it, after reading everything from everyone, you should also give your opinion as to what do you feel about that. And that is your conclusion. I would seriously recommend you that don't ever write conclusion by taking paragraphs from somewhere. Conclusion should be completely handwritten on your own. Like, so it is to be basically, you should read everything, whatever you have done in your core chapters, think and sit quietly and write it down. And then that becomes your conclusion. Not more than 2-3 pages, but that is your original work. So basically that is something which you should focus more. And that is why I have said it is your opinion. Okay, so it is your opinion piece. It is your op-ed. So this is about chapterization. Let me take you to another important part, and that is basically guidelines. So you also follow the format guidelines. So for dissertation and seminar, there are format guidelines given in your guidelines. For your research papers, you will have this particular format from different journals. So if you are publishing for X journal, different journals have their own format. So follow it. Generally, format would include your format font face and size. So either it can be Arial, Times New Roman, Bookman old style, whatever is the situation, and font. If nothing is provided, follow Times New Roman 12. This is the standard format, or maybe Arial 12. For footnotes, it is 10. Layout will be clearly mentioned. Page numbering should be there because it becomes easy to refer the work, and spacing and justification. So many a times you will find people not having a lot of research, not a lot of writing, so they will have too spacing. People who want have too many research, they will give zero spacing. So don't do that. Please follow the spacing norms which has been prescribed in your guidelines, and accordingly you should do your work. One important tip before I go ahead with the next slide is that in your chapterization, see the flow. It is very important that your chapters should flow sequentially. You should have, it should flow like a story, right? So it should not be like something is in between which is appearing as if an abstract, something which has been copied from somewhere and pasted. Don't do that. So be clear as to it is flowing as a story for you. And then one important thing which everybody says, and all researchers would tell you is editing is very, very important. So edit ruthlessly. So maybe your first draft when you write, you will have plenty of things written into it. But when you are reading it, proofreading it, be ruthless in your editing. It is very, very important, particularly when you are sending it to a journal. So say for example, in dissertation, you have a requirement of X number of words. So maybe you want to keep something, but when it goes to publication, maybe you want to publish it as an article or maybe a journal article or maybe a book chapter, then there you need to do the editing. So you will find in dissertations generally, which I have noticed, gone through several hundreds of dissertation by now, is that there is a lot of repetition. So you will find similar kind of a paragraph in chapter 1, chapter 4. So don't do that. So be clear about repetitions, do searches and remove it. It is always a good idea to read line by line, word by word, maybe 2-3 times your work. This will help you in 2 ways. One, that you will be, correcting your mistakes automatically. And secondly, that you will also remember what is you have written in your work. Even if you have copied and pasted from different places, the quotes and quotations, you will be in a situation to know exactly what is placed where, and you will be familiar with your topic. And what happens is when you read them, newer ideas also generate in your ideas. So that keep on jotting, and that becomes useful for you when you are writing your conclusion and recommendation. So please do follow this step. It is very important for all the researchers. Edit ruthlessly and do editing and proofreading. That is very important. Reference and bibliography is very, very important. Someone of you asked me this question. So why do you do reference and bibliography? We do reference and bibliography because there is a requirement of academic integrity, and academic integrity is very important. What is academic integrity? It is basically an intellectual honesty in proposing, performing, and reporting any activity which leads to the creation of intellectual property. So nowadays there are regulations also. So you all must be aware about plagiarism regulation. So plagiarism means practice of taking someone else's work or idea and passing them as their own. So it is nothing but intellectual dishonesty. It is theft. So please don't, fall into the prey of this plagiarism part. UGC promotion of academic integrity and prevention of plagiarism of higher education regulations strictly talks about measures which may be taken into consideration. So all kinds of universities are having this departmental integrity panel, and they take care of. We also have at UPS. So please be careful. Do citation, do quotation whenever you are using or referring somebody's work. Please cite that work. It is important. Now, how do you cite it? There are 2 modes to cite it. Either you can do it as a footnote or an endnote. Generally, in law papers, we have footnote concept. So footnote is nothing but at the end of the page, you do a citation that is called footnote. So if I may show you, so if that is called footnote, and at the end, if you are giving the notes about the references, that becomes the end notes. So generally in law papers, you will find that they follow the footnote concept. That is, at the foot of the page, you provide the references. Now, there are different styles with which you can write. Generally, what this citation contains. The citation contains some information like author, name of the author, title of the work, year of publication, and who is the publisher. And many a times you will find page numbers also, that exactly where you have referred the work. So this is something which is there in the citation. Now there are different citation styles. I don't recommend any specific citation style because it completely depends on journal to journal where you are publishing your work. But I believe for your dissertation and seminar, Blue Book is recommended. This is what the guideline says. So please follow the guidelines as per the publishing house where you are publishing your material. So you need to follow the reference and bibliography guidelines. But my point of bringing this slide was academic integrity. So please be conscious about this academic integrity. Intellectual honesty is the bottom line. That is the most important thing. So if you are referring somebody's article, please do provide the reference. It is very, very important. And not only it is a honor to the person whom you are referring, but at the same time, it also is a satisfaction on your part that you provided proper accreditation to the person who has done the hard work. So kindly follow this academic integrity principle to the core. It also helps, this reference and bibliography is also helpful, and you must have heard about something called, impact factor. So impact factor is calculated on the basis of the citations. So what is an impact factor? So say, for example, you want to calculate the impact factor of a journal. So you look at the impact factor of the journal like this. So say, for example, you are calculating an impact factor in 2019. So you look at all citations in 2019 to articles which have been published in 2017 and 18 divided by all articles published in 2017 and 18. So say, for example, in 2017 and 18 for Journal of Science or Journal of Law, the articles published were 25 and the citations were about, say, 10. So 10 divided by 25 would be the impact factor for that job. So this is something which is impact factor. You must have heard about this impact factor many times. So this is how the impact factor is calculated. Idea of impact factor is that how much is your research which you are publishing is being referred by other people, and how many people are getting influenced by that particular research. So many times people say, the first slide, if you recollect, why do you write? You write because people read your article. And how do you test? How do you know that whether they are reading or not? Is by citation. And how do you how the citation happens? Because of the academic integrity policy, that you need to cite the paper which you are referring. So this is how this whole thing works in terms of research. So I think this is what is there. I would talk about this power of collaboration in a while, but let me take the questions for now. Yeah. I will take the questions. Now let me see the question part of it. Hypothesis in your research, I have already answered Nitesh this particular part. So let me leave it. Is it necessary to be hypothesis? This also I answered. Someone is saying submit our dissemination. I think you are asking about dissertation. When do we have to submit? Now this is something which you should ask your course coordinators. Sir, the dissertation needs to be conclusive in sense that it should be. It can be explanatory, explanatory research is also possible, but that cannot be something where already there is a lot of explanation exists. So if it is a new area, then definitely there can be an explanatory research. But while you are doing the explanatory part of it, you need to refer to a lot of things. And something new should come up, otherwise there is no point doing a research. It cannot be just explanatory, because explanation is already available in books and treaties and all those places. If the explanation is not available, then definitely you can pick up a topic wherein you can explain this part, right? So I think this is what would be the answer. Okay. Now, is necessary to choose topics specifically from the specialization? That's a good question, Shardul, and this I have answered many a times. Specialization, because your dissertation is part of the honors program. So you need to justify if you take a topic which is beyond your specialization. So say, for example, you are doing your honors in corporate law and you want to publish something which relates to maybe say the human rights part of it. Now it is perfectly fine, you take up human rights, but you can write always on business and human rights, right? Say, for example, you want to write about the plight of farmers. You can write it from the perspective of corporate farming. So you need to choose that, and ultimately you are the person who will be holding a degree in honors in a particular stream. So you need to justify your dissertation. This is something which is there. We are not restricting you from not taking a particular topic, but as a counselor, I can counsel you only. So I hope that answers your query. Now, Okay, so I think whether there are students from UPS, some of the people who have joined beyond UPS also in this session. So if uh, like this is an answer only for UPS students. So if you are from UPS, then it is in two stages. So we are having a 2 credit course right now for dissertation, and that is at till the stage of synopsis. And then we will have 6 credit wherein you will be doing your core research. That will be in next semester. Okay, I think this particular session I kept it well, deliberately general in nature and wanted it to give you a background about research and research methodology so that it gives you understanding about your research and research methodology, how to approach it. So I will not take any specific questions which relate to your research, right? Okay, authenticity of internet source. Yes, authenticity of internet source can be checked by the background of that particular source. So say, for example, you are referring to a paper which is published by Harvard Law School. So if you go to the original website of the Harvard Law School, you know that this is something which will be authentic. But if you are, say, for example, you are referring to a blog, and in that particular blog, some prominent person in your area has written, now definitely that is authentic. So this judgment, the researchers have to take whether the research is authentic or not. But I would like to listen. Say, for example, you have quoted something in your research and you are heavily relying upon that, then in that particular situation, I would be definitely asking the question, who is the person whom you are relying? And if you say some XYZ, and I don't know that particular person, I will say that who is he? So this is something which you need to be clear about it. So if he is a very big practitioner, maybe if you are referring to Pawan Duggal statement somewhere he has given in social media, that has got a weight in cyber law than anyone else, maybe a student who has written something. So just be, I'm not saying that students are cannot give their statements and opinion, but definitely you don't get influenced by it because he has not practiced. It will take time for him to establish himself into the area. So be clear about it. But that doesn't happen in all cases. Like say, for example, if Ankit Faidia has to say something on cyber security, he was the youngest, cyber professional somewhere. So there you can always, so it all completely depends in the context. So there is no straight answer, Anamika, for this, but it is dependent on the judgment of the researcher as to which resource he is referring to. Okay. Yes. So you need to do research. I could not get your question, Muskan, so you can put it again clearly. Uh, I think I have covered most of the part. Now, this particular question, like say, for example, somebody wants to do a research on managing coal mining disasters in India. Now, when you say coal mining disasters, what is your focus? Whether the focus is coal mining or the disaster. So if it is coal mining disasters, then definitely disaster management law will come into picture. And at the same time, coal mining protection measures will also come into picture. So you need to read coal mining laws, and protection measures means specifically the health, safety, and environment issues relating to that, and that is how you proceed with your review of literature, and then you form up exactly what you are trying to research, whether you are focusing on disasters or whether you are focusing on coal mining specific disaster, whether you are talking about disaster which is caused by man or it is caused by natural circumstances. So these kinds of examinations can follow there. Okay, so this is what was from my side. I think there is one point which I wanted to talk to you was about power of collaboration. So power of collaboration is very important, So you need to collaborate. Many a times collaboration helps you. Now in dissertations and seminar, there is no allowance of collaboration, but in writing papers, yes. So it can be a co-authored paper, which you can think about, or it can be a co-mentored dissertation and seminar as well. So think about an industry expert with whom you would like to do your research. It always gives you credence to your research when you are being mentored by someone who is practicing in that area. So say, for example, coal mining and disaster. So can you find a person who is working in disaster management, and then you can do your work? So that will basically give you a lot of credence to your work, and you will get a proper guidance as far as subject is concerned. So please try to find a practice area person in your seminar and research area who can help you there. So it will be always good for you to consult them. It not only helps you from the content perspective, but also from the brand perspective, because you can always say that this dissertation was mentored by so and so. Maybe tomorrow you can think about co-authoring that particular paper, or the research which you have come out, maybe you can co-author with the concerned mentor. So it is very important, I think, and a good way of going ahead to do dissertation and seminar with co-mentoring with industry mentor. So I just wanted to put it across. Another important thing is that while you doing writing, you need to also work on your writing skills. So while you do research and everything, it is fine, but at the end of it, it is basically the communicating the research is very important. So what way you are communicating your research to people is very, very important aspect, and you need to be a good writer. So this requires practice, and I got hold of this self-publishing school. It is quite an interesting article I was reading, and this article basically tells you that you don't have to tell, you need to show. So your audience need to actually feel the way you are writing. So that particular thing can only happen when you are in complete command and control of your topic and your research area, and you are writing in your own words. So it is very important that you give that feeling to your research when you are doing a research. Just don't do it as a cosmetic matter, do it passionately, and definitely your research would be good. This is what I would like to say. I think I am done with this part of research thing. Let me talk about some more questions, and then maybe we can close this particular session. Let me stop share this. Okay, that's great. So some of you were raising your hands, so you can raise your hands, and thank you for being participating. I would be happy to take your comments if you want to give your comments. So please raise your hand. I can allow you to speak. If you have any questions, you can ask me the questions. Just raise your hand so that I can give you permission to speak. Yeah, so Rishi University recognizes that, and this information is already passed to your mentors, so you can utilize them. Just inform your mentor that you are utilizing this co-mentor, and you can mention it in your dissertation and seminar as well. Dissertation or seminar specificity is very important. So if you are getting more and more specific, it gives more weightage to your research. So please, be specific in your research. So generic topics generally don't help. It's very, very important for you to actually focus on specificity of it. Like say, for example, if you are saying insolvency and restructuring in energy sector, it's fine, but that is quite generic in nature. That will involve so many things. So what exactly is your focus? Whether you are talking about insolvency in energy sector and insolvency, maybe resolution plans in energy sector, or you are saying that rising number of insolvency in energy sector, or how insolvency law has fared well in energy sector. So there can be plenty of ways to look at it. and it is better that your research is specific around. Okay, so I think it was wonderful speaking to you all. It was wonderful speaking to you, and very well put questions from your side. And looking forward to similar kind of sessions in future. I hope this was helpful to you in your research and dissertation seminar. And looking forward to excellent researches by you. And I always find so much of pleasure when I read student articles, and they write so well. I must tell you that I'm quite fascinated about the articles which they write and kind of a depth of research they do. So sometimes I find many of the student articles better than the faculty members. There is no comparison as such, but it is all about quality of writing, which it is. And there is always a way to learn from your students. So I think all the best, and do well in your researches. Looking forward to your research being published. So I asked you a question in the beginning that why do you do research? So my answer to you, or my aspiration for you, would be to publish. So you do research to publish. So that is the single answer you should give, and you should start working around that thought, that you are doing your research for publishing. Thanks a lot. It was wonderful interacting with all of you. Thank you.